Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the GSMC Deadball Sports Podcast. And before we get into our second segment of the day, as always, you know the drill. Like, follow, and subscribe if you feel so inclined or you want more content such as this. Also, I would really love your input on which sports you would love me to talk about here in this new era of my career at the GSMC Sports Network. Leave any tips or donations if you so feel as well for our website, gsmcpodcast.net, or through the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. Great way to contribute and interact. It will just make the show that much better, I guarantee you, as we get deeper and deeper into the sports year. But without further ado, let us jump right into our second segment talking about that other AFC Wildcard matchup on Saturday. Steelers-Ravens 3.0. The historic rivalry of the AFC North gets renewed in a playoff setting. And I'm really intrigued by this edition of it because we really didn't learn all that much about these two teams when they played each other twice this season. The first matchup at the Steelers was an 18-16 slugfest where the Steelers proved that they still had Lamar Jackson's number. And of all the teams in the AFC, they have done perhaps the best job of beating up on Lamar Jackson when given their opportunities. Lamar Jackson has historically not performed well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But then they returned the favor at home to Baltimore to the tune of 34.17, and it really started these differing paths into the postseason for both of these teams. Baltimore truly heated up these past couple of games, especially with their defensive play. Their defense looked sluggish at certain points throughout the season, but really amped it up over the last 7 games. And Pittsburgh, yes, they played for the best teams in the entire NFL over the last couple of weeks this season, but they are really sliding at the wrong time here, and it's looking like another one-and-done playoff affair for Pittsburgh. As much as I hate to say it, if you're a Pittsburgh fan, it's really looking pretty dire for Pittsburgh heading into this one. And I think that the similar result to the 34-17 beatdown a couple of weeks ago could be coming for the Steelers team. Let's talk about different ways that either of these teams can win, because I still want to give Pittsburgh the benefit of the doubt. Like I said, they've been historically good at slowing down Lamar Jackson at key moments throughout his career. And so, why not in the playoffs, for the first time they're ever meeting in this situation where Lamar is entering the playoffs with Baltimore and he's facing Pittsburgh? Why not now? Why not then? But let's talk about how they have a tough mountain to climb to get to that point. Because Baltimore, let's talk about them. They've been heating up, like I said, at the right exact time, to the tune of their defense allowing a league-low 15.4 points in the past 7 games. They are entering the postseason looking good on not just one front, but all fronts. Combine that with the combination of Lamar Jackson, whether it be through his aerial threat, through his downfield prowess in the pass game, through his dual threat abilities, most importantly, combined with this power running game of Derrick Henry. Now this defense really stepping up. A lot of people were questioning how this defense would look sans Mike McDonald coaching it, and they really stepped up to the plate in these past couple of games. But they are facing a tough task in that Pittsburgh really does know their number. Yes, Pittsburgh's defense right now is coming in kind of the reverse fashion to this Baltimore Ravens defense. They've allowed a league high, I believe, 27.3 points per game over their past 4 in that 4-game slide, where they faced the top teams in the AFC and NFC that they should want to be able to beat come postseason time. So it's very, very worrying. And these defensive lapses are uncommon for a team known for their defensive prowess. It's miscommunications. It's losing receivers, letting them run wide open right past you. And yes, they've had a lot of injuries in their secondary. I know Deshaun Jackson is out, or Deshaun Elliott rather. Dante Jackson and Deshaun Elliott have been out. And they've had certain players having to step up. But still, this is the Steelers defense we're talking about, and it shouldn't have cratered to this level at this juncture of the season where you want to be able to compete in the postseason. And if you're Mike Tomlin, you should be frustrated because this is seemingly going to be another one of those one-and-done playoff exits for Pittsburgh yet again. But if there's one thing going for them, one silver lining, it's Russell Wilson's playoff experience. And I know it's something that's a little bit of a stretch here, considering that he hasn't been to the postseason actually in quite some time, whether it have been in his final years in Seattle or his tenuous years in Denver. He hasn't really been these past couple of seasons, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on his shoulders to deliver against Baltimore in this setting. But I do think he's someone who knows what it takes to get there, and his experience could play key in this moment, in this setting on the road against Baltimore. Now, certainly, I feel like if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and you're trying to find ways to justify your team winning this game, you would certainly think that the defense would be the answer, just because they've historically been able to slow down Lamar Jackson more so than the offense has been able to put up points on Baltimore's defense. But I do think there's hope and optimism in knowing that Russell Wilson is a quarterback who has established pedigree in the postseason. And so that's where I kind of start to see a silver lining for the hopes of Pittsburgh. For their offensive game plan, if they can just, get a rhythm going where they don't stagnate on early downs and they're not forcing Russ to create something in third and long, second and long situations, then they can try and play the possession game and try and force the Ravens to play catch up with the time they're leaving them, right? Because I view the Steelers as an offense that is a little bit too Russ-centric. They are kind of forcing him into situations where he has to be the magical Russ that he was for many years of his career in Seattle, and that's really not going to work for you in a postseason setting when you have 35-year-old Russell Wilson rather than, say, 25-year-old Russell Wilson. So it's not going to work in that setting, so you're going to have to find ways to circumvent it. You're going to have to find ways to establish the run game with Najee Harris in better situations than those little pitches they run, which really kind of tick me off, because even though I'm not a Steelers fan, I hate when you try and run the football off a pitch behind an inconsistent offensive line, which the Steelers' offensive line has been this year, and really try and develop and grow into this game if you're Arthur Smith game planning for this. And then on the defensive side of the football, you're really going to have to key in on what you want to stop when it comes to the Ravens, because I don't necessarily think you're going to stop every single aspect of the Ravens offense if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're going to have to want to say, do we take away Lamar Jackson's dual threat ability? Do we take away the run game entirely, try and bottle up Derrick Henry? Or do we key in on shoring up our downfield defense and try and limit the big plays that Baltimore are certainly capable of? And I do feel that of all those three options in slowing down this Baltimore Ravens attack, you got to slow down Lamar Jackson's dual threat ability if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You can't let Lamar Jackson get out of the pocket, and I do feel that the Pittsburgh defensive front is still fearsome enough to get to him and generate enough pressure. It's going to be up to the secondary to stop certain explosive plays from happening downfield. And ultimately, I do trust that this Pittsburgh defensive front can generate some sort of pressure on Lamar Jackson, because granted, these are two offensive lines that have been pretty inconsistent for these playoff contenders. I feel like the Ravens' inconsistencies were more towards the start of the season, and Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry just overcame them just because of how special they are as athletes. But ultimately, I do feel that is one of the weaknesses that you can exploit if you're Pittsburgh defensively. On the Baltimore side of things, I do feel like you're going to want to get Lamar into more of a rhythm. And I'm not saying this becomes a detriment to his dual threat ability, but I do say that if you want to attack the Pittsburgh secondary a little bit more because of their vulnerabilities, you're going to want to get Lamar into more of a rhythm than his dual threat abilities seemingly adapt to. Because I feel like if the Pittsburgh Steelers do, as I say, key in on stopping him getting outside the pocket and creating out of structure, then you're going to want to find ways to stop the pass rush. And one way of doing that is trying to get Lamar Jackson short to intermediate routes open where he's not necessarily facing that much pressure. And I know it's kind of weird pinning Lamar Jackson in that camp as kind of a quote-unquote pocket passer, which I don't necessarily think will happen just because of how special he can be out of structure, but it is something that the Baltimore Ravens might want to keep in the back of their mind in order to prepare for what Pittsburgh's defense is going to throw at them. So that's why I feel like you have to develop some sort of plan. If Lamar isn't operating out of structure, creating out of structure, then you're going to want to have to find ways that he can advance the football and stay on schedule. Because I do feel like Pittsburgh also can feel like if they generate enough pressure on Lamar Jackson, they can force turnovers and thus win the field position battle. So if you're Baltimore, you're going to want to try and staunch that. You're going to want to try and stop that. And so that's what I'm trying to say here. Not saying that Lamar Jackson can't just be special and blow Pittsburgh out of the water, which he certainly is capable of, but you're going to want to find a way, if you're Baltimore, to come up with another plan B. Because I feel like Derrick Henry can be a decent factor in this game, but if you want Lamar comfortable and you want to kind of counteract what Pittsburgh is throwing at you, then you have to come up with something that looks like that blueprint that I just laid out. But I still am erring on the side of Baltimore here just because they are the better team, and I feel it will be more 34-17 than 18-16. So I'm going to take the Ravens here, 34-20. I'm going to give the Steelers another 3 points here just because, but I do feel like right now at this current moment, Pittsburgh's reeling. And they really haven't shown they can compete with the elite of the AFC. And so I just feel like Baltimore is ready to pounce. They are the absolute opposite of where the Pittsburgh Steelers are right now, and they're looking to pounce. And so that's why I feel like the Ravens could look to have another beatdown courtesy of the Pittsburgh Steelers on their hands here. So that's why I feel like Baltimore's going to win this one handily. Let me know what you think about this game in the comments, because coming up next, we kind of transition from talks of games to talks of head coaches, because this is the period of the NFL season where we hear a lot of hire news. And we're going to be talking specifically about the Jacksonville Jaguars firing Doug Peterson right after this short break. So you don't want to go anywhere.